All right, well, let's talk about insider trading. Seemingly cut and dry no-no when it comes to the law. The idea that it should be against the rules to profit off of a tip or material non-public information that's given to you from an inside source. But when it comes to prosecuting people for doing just that, you might not know that an appellate ruling back in 2014 basically made it drastically more difficult for prosecutors to convict alleged insider traders. The new standard became having to prove defendants knew they were trading on info that came from a tipper who also received a personal benefit. But a new bill, the Insider Trading Prohibition Act, just passed the House again. It seeks to slightly undo the added difficulty there by making illegal any insider trading that was obtained by wrongful means. And for more on that, I want to bring on the bill's sponsor here with us, Democratic Representative Jim Himes from Connecticut. Congressman, thanks for taking the time here to chat. You know, some people might say that the bill doesn't go far enough because a tippee could, I guess, technically still provide inside information with the expectation of a future favor that could come from it. So what's the purpose of this bill? What's it trying to solve the most here?
Well, so the bill has two purposes, and thanks for having me on. Number one, it turns out, lo and behold, we don't actually have a specific law against insider trading. For the last 100+ years or so, insider trading has been prosecuted largely under Section 10B of the Securities Act of 1934. And a huge body of court-made law has grown up around that. And the problem with court-made law is that courts can reverse court-made law. And that's what we've seen in the last 5 or 6 years, particularly in the Second Circuit Court of Appeals, where decisions have muddied the water and, in fact, reversed convictions. So point number one is we're actually doing what we say we do in this country, which is legislating our laws rather than operating under court-made law. But you're exactly right on your point, which is that because insider trading has always been prosecuted under fraud provisions, there's always been this concept of, did I know that the guy I was giving a tip to was going to both get a benefit and convey some benefit back to me? So the law that we've proposed is very simple. It just says, look, if you are aware of material inside information that you know was wrongly obtained or recklessly disregarded the fact that it was wrongly obtained, you're guilty potentially of insider trading. So it's about simplification, really.
Congressman, it does feel like there's been a lot of discussion about insider trading, especially among lawmakers during the pandemic. Former Senator Kelly Loeffler, one of those that's been accused of that, but there are many others whose names that have been added to the list. I wonder what you think is different this time around about this discussion and the potential momentum you have to bring this bill to law.
Yeah, well, I just, first of all, it doesn't have really much partisan flavor to it, right? So we passed it in the last Congress with overwhelming Democratic and Republican support. And so the only impediment to getting it passed into law was that the Senate didn't act on it, which, of course, is sort of the story of so many pieces of legislation in this country. I'm hoping that with Chairman of the Banking Committee, Sherrod Brown, I may have better luck getting it on the agenda over there. But you raise an important point, Akiko, and people need to understand it is not okay for members of Congress to insider trade. We don't have some special exemption. In fact, if you talk to my former colleague, Chris Collins, who was convicted of insider trading, he would tell you that it's a very bad idea. But now you get into sort of prudential stuff, right? I mean, members of Congress, honestly, we don't get a lot of inside information that is tradable. Most of what the meetings we're in are public. But nonetheless, think hard before you trade individual stocks. By the way, that's probably good advice generally, but think hard before you trade individual stocks because the perception could be pretty ugly.
Yeah, I mean, when we talk about other things that could come out there, and there are people who might say, it's obviously not good to be maybe presenting information to the public or donors one way differently than what you're saying on TV. And that's kind of what we saw back in March there from some congressmen and women. But when we talk about other regulations out there as well, Bitcoin's one that's catching a lot of attention here as you think about maybe even tax rules changing. The Treasury kind of saying that they want more reporting around people transferring 10 grand or more there. Talk to me about what you expect to see when it comes to regulation in the crypto space, considering, it's been a long time coming, but it doesn't seem like you'd ever be able to ban it. So what's your take on maybe what Congress wants to do?
Yeah, it's a great question. And look, I'll tell you the status quo, which is that most of my colleagues don't have a deep understanding of cryptocurrencies, what they can do, what the dangers are. And the Congress hasn't spent a lot of time on it. So for better or for worse, there's not going to be legislation passed out of the United States Congress anytime soon. That said, more and more of my colleagues are becoming aware. And I would describe to you, let me describe to you the atmosphere. I think it was actually relatively well characterized in an op-ed that Paul Krugman put into the New York Times today, which is, okay, so innovative idea, that's interesting. What does it actually do? What problem does it solve? Because it's pretty clearly of benefit to those drug dealers, human traffickers, potentially terrorists. I get how they might like it, but tell me what the other benefits are. Now, I'm not weighing in here. I'm just telling you that that's the sort of general atmosphere in the Congress where people are saying, tell me again what's good about cryptocurrency. What problem does it solve? Now, don't get me wrong. That doesn't mean there's going to be an attempt to ban it, but that I think is the case that needs to be made to the Congress right now.
Yeah, and that, Congressman, to your point, I think points to just the real divide here in terms of how cryptocurrencies are traded, specifically Bitcoin today, versus what the perception is. As you look at the price moves, just how volatile things have been, I wonder what questions you have. If this is really about still the educational phase, trying to learn a bit more, what questions do you have that could lead to potential proposals down the line?
Well, there's going to be a lot of discussion in the coming years about ways to regulate, how to tax, et cetera, all the stuff that causes the government to intersect with something like cryptocurrency. However, in a bigger, let me give you sort of a bigger frame of reference. The piling into cryptocurrencies, the GameStop bubble, Robinhood, SPACs, I could list for you 12 things that feel to me like they are largely a function not of deep fundamental investment research, but largely a function of immense amounts of liquidity. And I don't know that those things necessarily need to be regulated. I'm not saying that, but it is very clear to me that there's a lot of people out there who believe that trees grow to the sky and will get a very expensive education in what the downside of volatility looks like when we do see some kind of bear market or some kind of depression in asset prices. A lot of people are going to get very expensive educations when that happens.